Which crazy stories involving lawyers taught you the most important lessons? Story 1. Following the court order alt account, mobile. This is the first half of a decade-long tale that is currently resolving in a delightful way. Over a decade ago, I came home to find I was being moved out by my wife. We weren't in a great place, but I was blindsided. I was also served with a protection order that stated I could not come home without prior written permission. I had to go through my wife to see the kids, etc. And it was in effect for 90 days. I was devastated. Relative connected me with a bulldog of a lawyer. This lady was brilliant and no nonsense. She filed a rebuttal to the protection order, but told me these things take time, and we were unlikely to see a judge before the 90 days were up. She was very clear that I must follow the court order to the letter. If there was any evidence otherwise, I'd be in an uphill battle if, when my wife renewed it, it only took one day before my now ex needed me to take the kids. I had crashed at a friend's house, so I had no place to take them. So we agreed I'd watch them at home. I waited a few blocks away while waiting for an email. Ex called me, and I reminded her of the details of the order and that I wouldn't come until I had permission. This happened twice more, that I waited down the street within the first week. So I told her I wouldn't leave where I was staying until I had the email. It was about 20 minutes away. I texted her to remind her. The very next day she again didn't email. We were planning on me picking up the kids to take them to school, since their school was only a few minutes from my work. However, because I had not received written permission, I ran out of time to drive to pick up the kids and then make it to their school and work. She called furious that I wasn't there. I reminded her about the permission and that I was out of time. She ended up being very late to work that day. She then wanted to write me blanket permission to come and go as needed, but my lawyer advised against it. Follow the order. The culmination of this was a few weeks later when she again forgot to send permission. Her boyfriend was staying over, but didn't have his car with him. They both had to get to work, and that was the day I learned that he was her direct supervisor. Ex had to call a friend from work to pick up kids and take them to school, and the friend found out. Of course it got out at their work. Within a week of that, the boyfriend was fired over their relationship, and my ex was suspended. By this time, I had my own place, so the kids ended up staying with me most days. I later learned that the protection order was the boyfriend's idea. Ex was quite mad about it, as it turned into evidence that I wasn't a threat to her or the family, and the judge was quite harsh with her over it when we settled for support and parenting time. She called it intentional and harmful parental alienation. Part 2, same day. This is the second part that was removed from Pro Revenge. I'll maybe fix it later there. This is the second half of a decade-long tale that is currently resolving in a delightful way. A decade ago, my then-wife, now ex-wife, began a relationship with a guy and kicked me out of my house. The boyfriend was instrumental in blindsiding me and planning on how to keep me from my own kids. Ever since, I've kind of hated him. I've always been polite and respectful with boyfriend because he'd become my kid's stepdad. But if ever I had the chance, I'd get back at him. I figured it would be something petty, but then he gift-wrapped my revenge, and I've been running with it for almost 3 weeks now. My kids are mostly grown now. Some in university, some in grades 11 to 12. The uni kids live with me, while the high school still go back and forth with their mom. I'm also remarried now. My wife and I each have our own vehicles, but my wife owns and insures a minivan for when we all are going somewhere together. The kids are free to use it too, as only one has a car. We only have one set of keys, so I put an AirTag on it. It is a little transponder that tracks its location. I put it on there in case the keys were lost. About 3 weeks ago, one of my older kids took the van out for the night, but ended up staying at his mom's on the couch. Around 7 a.m. the next day, another kid asked to use the van. I pinged the AirTag only to find out it was hours away in an industrial section of another town. I was quite concerned why my kid was out there. I called him up, and he was at his mom's where he said he'd be. He had no idea the van was missing. I called the police and gave them the location of the van. Within 20 minutes they had stopped the van, and the driver said he had permission to use it. Lo and behold, it is my ex-wife's boyfriend. The police weren't very interested in detaining him, as it would be easier for him to just drive the van back to our town and we could sort it out here. However, it wasn't my van, nor was he listed on the insurance to drive it. I asked that it be impounded. In Canada, we can't press charges, but I was adamant that this was theft and that I wasn't going to let it go. Since the guy was out of town with no ride, the police did end up detaining him, probably because it was easier. I was given info for the yard where the van was impounded. Since we had the next day off, my wife and I drove out to the yard to pick it up. When we got there, I first checked for damage since it was sitting a little low. Nothing outside. When I checked inside, I found that it was loaded with industrial fasteners and cable. Think seismic mitigation. Turns out boyfriend used my wife's van to pick up stuff for work. My wife turns on her heels and walks to the office. I had to jog to keep up. She asks who has access to the van. They have the only set of keys, so my wife is assured only her or me. At this point I get where she's going with this. I instruct them that no one access the van but us. I had $35 with me, so I gave it to them as a tip. They promised me that no one would get in there, and they actually moved the van into a secured area within the yard. Then we went home without the van. We weren't even home from the long drive when I got the first text from boyfriend about getting the equipment. I explained that we left the van, as there were expenses we were not going to pay. Towing, impounding fees, daily storage. I told him that he'd have to pay for them before I pick up the van. He was super mad and swore he will pay me back. I said no way. Within an hour I got a call from his boss. They need the equipment as soon as possible for a time-sensitive job. I explained that it was impounded and that I will not have time to get it until next week now. And it has to be paid in advance. Boss swears up and down at me. I calmly explained that I didn't steal a vehicle to transport his stuff. Boss was having none of that, so I said I will not tolerate that abuse and hung up. Then I blocked him and his company on every platform I am reachable on, and that was 3 weeks ago. Since then, I've been able to make excuses every single time boyfriend tries to arrange picking up the van. Often because the kids don't have the van, so I have to drive them. Boss has gotten through a few times using other numbers and sent a ton of emails that I ignore, but I did reply and explain that both my wife and I need about 4 hours to do the round trip and that it needs to be paid for ahead of time. And it has added up. $25 a day for secure storage plus towing and impound fees, etc. Plus I wanted to be paid for the fuel boyfriend used as well as our travel. Boyfriend and I agreed on the standard 58 cents per kilometer, and so the boss transferred us for the total cost of our driving. By now the van has made 1 trip and our car has done 2. It came to almost $600, so on Friday it finally happened. My wife and I drove out and picked up the van. It was prepaid and ready to be released. I dropped off a dozen beer at the office when I picked up the keys and went to grab the van. However, I wasn't going to transport boss and boyfriend's stuff, so I arranged for it to be held at the yard at the same rate as a vehicle, unloaded it, and left right before it closed for the weekend. I got a call from boyfriend asking when he can come by with a work truck to get the stuff. I told him it is still at the impound almost 2 hours away, and the office opens Monday at 9. There was only silence on the other end, so I hung up after about 10 seconds. Through this, I've been getting vague updates from my ex, who I've got a good relationship with now. She was livid with boyfriend and was clear with me that any and all consequences were squarely on him. He has kept his job, but is missing the next pay increase and is not getting his year-end bonus. Ex said they're way too short-staffed to let him go, but he is in the doghouse at home and at work. No word on criminal charges for taking the van, but Crown handles that, and I am not suing in civil court. Story 2 lawyers, boss babes, and an 18-pound tumor. 2 words, batshit banana pants. Human resources won't do anything about a coworker who's angry about my weight loss. February 8, 2023. I just came back to work after a month-long emergency medical leave. The too long didn't read is that after a decade of medical gaslighting, a new doctor ordered an emergency magnetic resonance imaging during a routine visit and discovered a mass in my abdomen. I was rushed into surgery within 24 hours. I ended up having an 18-pound benign tumor pressing on my vital organs, and I was about a week away from multiple organ failure. I'm lucky to be alive, and time will tell if I have any lasting organ damage, but right now everything is fine. Mentally, I'm struggling with a few things, but the only outwardly noticeable impact is that I've gone from a size 20 to a size 8. Nobody on my medical team anticipated a change this drastic, but I'm healthy and lucky. I was expecting to get a lot of questions from my coworkers because curiosity exists. I had a basic emergency surgery, but I'm fine now answer that almost everyone accepted but one coworker who I hardly speak to, Aubrey. On my first day back to work, Aubrey came up to me and said, "I wish you had come to me to lose the weight instead of resorting to such drastic measures. You're going to gain it all back, you know. I'll be waiting." I was aware of Aubrey's reputation, but since we never worked together, I didn't think it would be an issue. She's one of those people who think they're a fitness expert and calls herself a health coach, nothing to do with the company we work for. She has a reputation for giving out unsolicited and incorrect health advice and is always commenting on people's food choices. I was speechless when she asked why I opted to get butchered instead of putting in the hard work to lose the weight. There's nothing wrong with someone choosing surgical weight loss options, but that's not what happened to me, and I really resented her aggressive attitude spreading rumors during my second week back. She came by my office at the end of the day in athletic gear, offering to go with me if I was too afraid to go to the gym alone. At the time, I wasn't even cleared to lift my kid, do laundry, or climb a flight of stairs, let alone go to the gym with this crackpot. I don't remember what I said to her, but she left saying I'd gained the weight back because I'm lazy. The next day, Aubrey ranted angrily about me in a meeting I wasn't in, missed it for a follow-up, ironically. I don't know everything that was said, but the gist was that if I can't dedicate myself to weight loss, I obviously can't see my work obligations through. Human Resources called for a red flag mediation. At our company, mediation can go against your bonus opportunities for the year. I have no idea why I'm in mediation when she's the one being an asshat. At the mediation, Aubrey stated that she was triggered by my new body, and I should have thought of other people's feelings and warned her before my surgery. I hardly had time to warn my husband and get my kid out of daycare. I don't owe Aubrey anything. I have empathy that she's obviously struggling, but that does not excuse her behavior. Human Resources said that while they can't ask me to explain my medical history, it might clear the air if I told her what kind of surgery I had and why. I said I wasn't obligated to share my medical information with anyone, and that Aubrey having bad coping skills doesn't entitle her to a coworker's personal health information. Their response was kind of, "Well, then we can't stop her from bullying you." After Thanksgiving, my doctor helped me put in Americans with Disabilities Act accommodation paperwork so I could work from home. I was having some mild complications from surgery, but also to avoid Aubrey. This company hates remote work, so they're really not happy. Aubrey still emails me workout videos and diet plans, and when I forward them to Human Resources, their response is, "Noted. Do you know when you're coming back to the office? I've been thinking about escalating this to corporate with an employment lawyer." Is that overkill? I'm still in a sensitive place after my surgery, and I have no energy for this, especially since Aubrey is fixated on weight loss, which was the primary way doctors gaslit me for years. I've been with this company for 5 years, and I'm just exhausted and disappointed in how they're handling this, and I want it over yesterday. Update April 17, 2023. All I have to say for this update is hold on to your banana pants. I saw a lot of comments asking where management was in all this, so I'll address that first. My boss, George, was getting ready to retire while this was going on. George is roughly my grandfather's age, so this entire situation bewildered both him and his replacement, who he was training at the time. Both of them met with Aubrey's boss, because believe me, I was documenting everything she did from the jump, and they all assured me that Aubrey would be dealt with. None of them recommended the red flag mediation. That was human resources' idea. I was given details of the meeting where Aubrey ranted about me, and it was horrible, but apparently Aubrey was asked to leave by her own boss, while several other employees told her to stop. So managerially, and in the office in general, people were trying to rein her in from many different angles. Human resources is where the ball dropped and dropped hard. This company just has a poor human resources structure and bad entry to mid-level human resources. When Aubrey's boss referred her to human resources regarding her negative behavior, human resources took it upon themselves to consider it a mediation situation, which, remember, at our company can go against your bonus for the year, despite communication from George, his replacement, and Aubrey's boss saying I wasn't in the wrong. When George found out about this, he spoke to the Human Resources Generalist's manager, who said that my absence probably caused a lot of strain and extra work for Aubrey, when Aubrey's not even credentialed to do what I do. Management made a point to tell me how baffled and upset they were with Human Resources' handling of the situation every time something came up. My company mentor was also a huge support during this time until she decided to take another job elsewhere. When my doctor extended my Americans with Disabilities Act work-from-home accommodation a second time, Human Resources responded by telling me my attendance was a concern. I emailed their boss's boss, the Human Resources Director, and asked for clarification. He said I hadn't come into the office, so of course my attendance was a problem. I reiterated I had medical documentation stating that if work from home wasn't available, then they could refer to the Family and Medical Leave Act documentation my medical team also sent. He replied that medical documentation, including both Family and Medical Leave Act and Americans with Disabilities Act reasonable accommodations, doesn't hold much weight with the company. That's when I got a lawyer. Aubrey as a problem kind of drifted to the background when Human Resources started their medical documentation doesn't matter campaign. On my lawyer's recommendation, I contacted the Human Resources executive team, which is where this whole cursed situation came to light. And I did check with my lawyer about emailing this update, and they laughed and said I couldn't leave people hanging after all that. I called the Chief Human Resources Officer, which for my company is going over like 5 people's heads, but I did it with George's and my new boss's blessings, who is the head of Human Resources, and asked why my attendance was an issue when I had reasonable Americans with Disabilities Act documentation. She had no idea what I was talking about, so I filled her in on all of it, including the mediation meeting and Aubrey's harassment, and the Human Resources Director, her direct report, saying medical documentation didn't hold any weight with the company. She was speechless and asked to meet with me and my lawyer as soon as possible. My lawyer hardly had to do anything during the meeting because the Chief Human Resources Officer was horrified at everything I told her. I've never actually seen steam come out of someone's ears, but if it was physically possible, it would have happened here. My lawyer didn't need to say a word, but just nodded and smiled when the Chief Human Resources Officer offered an extended paid medical leave so I could handle my recovery, and said Aubrey constantly sending me fitness plans would be dealt with swiftly. I didn't hear anything out of Aubrey for a long time, but I did hear through some gossip channels that the Human Resources staff involved in the red flag meeting threatening to write me up were let go. Aubrey wasn't fired because they believed she was misled by Human Resources, so I understand that part even if I don't agree with it, but she was on a tight performance improvement plan for a while. Then she showed up at my house. Now we move from banana pants to full-on banana ensemble. I'm still on leave, and out of the blue, Aubrey showed up at my door on a weekend with 2 other women in tow, and the commenters guessed it. She's in very deep with a multi-level marketing company, or maybe a cult, I can't be sure at this point. Aubrey came over to demonstrate some workout techniques, and give me some diet supplement samples, and discuss a career opportunity, because she was worried about my physical and professional health. She didn't make it past my mother-in-law, who has been a godsend right now. My mother-in-law made it clear where Aubrey could stick her demonstration, and they left in a hurry. I notified my lawyer and the chief human resources officer, and suffice it to say, Aubrey is now a full-time wellness coach. I'm happy I went with my gut and got a lawyer, because the company has changed so drastically over the last year, with the toxic human resources department encouraging behavior like Aubrey's and spreading false information about medical leave and time off. The company is almost unrecognizable. Also, with my boss and mentor both gone, I don't know if I'm going to go back once I'm medically cleared. The company is also undergoing a restructuring right now, and my department may end up distributed between other parts of the company or even other parts of the state. I have been looking at jobs and doing some resume drafting for a full-time remote position, since it feels like it might be a better fit. But many thanks to the comment section and all the support. New update. June 12, 2023, I got an offer from a local company that's going fully remote with administration and management meeting up once a month. The salary was right. It's 90% remote. It's a good fit, so I'm happy with it. My role is human resources adjacent as head of payroll. I report to the chief operating officer and was hired by the chief executive officer and chief operating officer. I walk into our first admin meeting, and who is sitting across from me but the human resources director, who told me medical documentation doesn't matter and orchestrated my red flag meeting. Let's call him Bob. Bob is the interim human resources director for this company. Bob looked very uncomfortable when he saw me. We went through some employee files, including several who are on maternity leave and 2 who were injured on a job site. Bob got quieter as we began reviewing medical documentation and approving paid leave. I smiled and looked him in the eye every time I asked, "And does Jill have her medical documentation?" Great. Medical documentation holds a lot of weight. That's important stuff to have. He looked like he wanted to melt into his seat. At one point he tried to argue against someone using their paid time off to provide end-of-life care for a parent when they had ample paid time off. I smiled and said, "You're right, our employee support fund should cover half this time. It's a shame for them to have to lose all their paid time off when they're obviously going to need it to heal and grieve over the next few months. Why don't you get me the paperwork for the support fund this afternoon?" That's so generous. Everyone was happy and in agreement. He looked like he swallowed a lemon, but everyone was like, "Oh my God, Bob, how thoughtful. He had to eat it so bad and got me the documentation an hour later. Bob can suck it." Bob is also only a contractor, so he'll be moving on soon anyway. Medically, I'm doing better, and very happy to move on from where I was. Aubrey's been full-on radio silence, which is perfect for me. Thanks AAM team and commenters. Story 3. Do I need a lawyer for an age discrimination lawsuit? November 12, 2018. Please hear me out. I met up with a guy from Plenty of Fish. He seemed normal when we were talking. So I meet him at the restaurant, and there is an obviously much older man than the 30-year-old that he claimed to be. I sat down, and I told him I was under the assumption he was younger, and he had told me he was younger. He claimed they were older pictures, and that it must have been a typo, although his profile also said 30, and that he was actually 45 years old. I told him I was not interested in someone almost 20 years older than me, and I wished him well. He began to raise his voice a little, saying he had already ordered a dish and wine for me, and I needed to sit down and eat with him. I went to the bartender and gave a brief explanation of what had happened, and the manager walked me to my car while the bartender stayed with the guy to make sure he didn't follow me. I went about my merry way for a couple of months before I was served at work with papers stating I was being sued. I called the attorney listed to verify, and he confirmed that they were real. He was a client, and I was being sued the cost of the entire dinner and his travel expenses because I used his age as discrimination, which was also illegal. I made the mistake of giving him my last name, which is not common, and he found my employer on Facebook. Everything has since been locked down or deleted. Now again, hear me out. I know this will get thrown out. I'm fully aware he's crazy. Do I need to get a lawyer for this? Money has been tight, and I'm paying off student loans galore. Is it possible to walk in the courtroom and represent myself and not be completely murdered by their attorney? Any and all advice is so completely welcome. A comment with some legalese by you Totterbiscuit, something like detrimental reliance. I'm out all of this money based on a promise you made that you didn't keep. I relied on your promise to my detriment is an equitable claim, a type of claim for damages or relief not based in ordinary principles of law. No. Showing a date under ordinary circumstances wouldn't give rise to a detrimental reliance claim. Under circumstances where it was even conceivable, it would be limited to things she knew about ahead of time, like if there was substantial travel expense involved for him. Him ordering food or wine without her knowing about it isn't going to be recoverable, even if it was a $5,000 bottle of wine. That said, it's baked into the whole concept of dating that no one is required to participate or remain in a situation that makes them uncomfortable. So like maybe for a no-show, but it's a stretch. Show up, you, later bro, is within the scope of normal dating procedure, but even so, of the many rules involved in equitable claims, one of them is, to get equity, one must do equity. The reason for the failure can't be rooted in something you did in bad faith. Even if there were some substance behind a claim for damages for a ruined date, he misrepresented his age by 15 years. That's bad faith right there. Detrimental reliance or quasi-contract or promissory estoppel is more appropriate for a situation where a unilateral promise is made, which is unenforceable under most circumstances, with the intent to get the other person to do or not do something. It doesn't matter if it was inadvertent or not malicious. The promisor has to know that the promisee would suffer some detriment or change of circumstance if the promisee relies on the promise your employer tells you that you've been with the company long enough that whenever you decide to retire, you'll get half your pay for the rest of your life. You retire, and after a couple of months the checks stop coming. The promise was unilateral, so it's unenforceable under an ordinary legal claim. But you wouldn't have retired if the promise hadn't been made, and your employer knows that. The damage to you isn't the loss of a pension, since that was never enforceable. It's the loss of a job. So the employer should make good on the promise for a reasonable time while you look for a new job. Update. November 25, 2018. First, thank you all so much for the kind words and suggestions. I even saw that it made best of legal advice and was floored by the overwhelming support from both communities. Unfortunately, this update has good and bad in it. I did find an attorney to help me. I made an appointment and tearfully explained my situation, begging him to let me make payments as I could only afford such and such amount, but I could sell my car if needed. Not sure if it was because of the holidays or he just wanted me out of his office. I kid, he was so nice and understanding, but he told me not to worry about it and I could make a donation or volunteer at a charity. He agreed to start off with a very strongly worded letter, and we would keep in contact from there to see what happened. The bad, I don't want to go into much detail just in case, but law enforcement is now involved. I am okay and unharmed, that's all that matters. What I am able to give out due to it being reported on was after having to change my phone number, he attempted to show up at my apartment and waved a gun at security when they told him they wouldn't let him in. However, there is now another investigation as he may be linked to another criminal case in my area. Again, thank you all for the kind words and support. Just wanted to give you guys some closure while I was getting mine. Edit. I did want to add an answer to a big question I left out previously, because I was unsure if I should have disclosed it, that previously the amount of damages he was looking at originally was over $6,500. He claims the cost of dinner was $250. It was at a frickin' restaurant that rhymes with Bolive Darden. His gas guzzler of a car at $150 for mileage. But the best was when we were talking, I had mentioned how I wanted to go to South Africa, and he allegedly started buying the works for me. But seriously, I know I've tried to use some humor in this, but I'm a little broken inside. I'll be starting therapy soon because it has given me horrible panic attacks, and I've just been trying to cope with how I could have been a statistic. Story 4. Our 19-year-old son landed at Dulles from an international flight at 7 p.m. At 7:45, he texted that he was heading to customs. It's now 11:30 p.m. We haven't heard from him and cannot reach him. I've called the phone number for the airport to page him, and for customs there's no one there to answer. Both lines say they're closed. We live in Boston. He flew into D.C. to attend his cousin's graduation before heading home. His phone is going straight to voicemail. What would you do at this point? 20 minutes later, his phone was at 65% at 7:45. The last time I was able to track him. He's supposed to Uber to a hotel to meet family there. They haven't heard from him yet, and he hasn't shown up. I'll try the airport police original poster comments. 3 minutes later, commercial ambition 5. Is there any reason he may be getting held up for visa or immigration issues? Original poster. He goes to the American University in Bulgaria. He's an American citizen. He's 19 years old. He's never been arrested. I don't know of any reason why he would be held at customs or have any problems. I spoke with him before his flight, letting him know how crazy America is right now and to make sure there's nothing that would cause a problem. I just got off the phone with the Dulles police, gave a description of him and his flight information, and hopefully they'll call me back tonight. Thank you for the suggestions and insights so far. 2 minutes later. Bloated globe. I've been stuck in Dulles customs for 2+ hours before. Do you know where he flew from? The Lufthansa flight from Munich is the biggest flight that arrives in Dulles, and it landed just before your kid arrived, so he might have been in customs past 10 p.m. Dulles is like 45 from D.C., so it's definitely possible that he hadn't arrived at his accommodation yet. Is he a U.S. citizen? Original poster. He was on the flight from Munich. And I understand there was some thunderstorms earlier, so perhaps with a bunch of delayed flights. He's just been stuck in customs. That's what I'm hoping for. Update comment. 1.75 hours from original poster. Post 1:15 a.m. Update. Airport police called me back and confirmed he's still in customs. She couldn't tell me if it was long lines or detained. She said the customs officer that she spoke with said he would have him call me when he's able. We're not a Trump supporter but hasn't posted stuff about it. Update comment. 5 hours later. Recovered. Editor's note. Original poster's original comment was removed because it showed the phone number. I was able to recover it, and original poster also reposted the screenshot with the number covered. Finally heard from him at 4:30 a.m. Image, the transcribed voicemail from original poster's son. Transcription. Mom, please, you have to pick up. The Federal Bureau of Investigation has seized my phone and my computer, and I need help as soon as possible. I'm at the airport. I don't know what to do. It's like 3 a.m. Update comment. A few minutes later, over 7 from original poster. Post, I booked him an Uber, and he finally got to the hotel. He was too afraid to talk too much on the payphone at the airport. But he said he was questioned about his loyalty. What the actual F? They confiscated his laptop and phone. They said he may get it back in a day or two. Clarifying comments. Commenter. Scrub that phone number, bro. Original poster. That's the payphone number he called me from. Thanks though. Commenter. Why would he have to ask you to pick up? Wouldn't you have been glued to your phone by that point? Original poster. I did answer but the connection was bad. He couldn't hear me. I tried calling the number back, and that's when his call went to voicemail. Commenter. Bulgaria is a proxy for Russia, lot of spycraft going on. It's a bit unusual for an American attending university there. It could be random, but this feels more like a tip-off. Editor's note. As many commenters below and on the original post have pointed out, this is not true about Bulgaria, and the university is incredibly well respected. Original poster. I do wonder if he was targeted due to coming to the States on a one-way ticket from an Eastern Bloc country. But he has his student ID and student visa info. He's a U.S. citizen, born, raised, no criminal record. Commenter. Original poster. You posting previously about the consequences of espionage 7 days ago makes me feel like there's more to this story. Original poster. As a crime podcast enthusiast, I wish that were the case. But no. I had just read some news story about a spy exchange or something along those lines, and just wondered about the consequences. Unfortunately, this is just a 19-year-old American kid who was targeted for whatever reason. I'll find out more when I talk to him later today. Hopefully he sleeps for a long time. Update comment. 2 hours later, 9 hours from original poster post particular Maine 1267. Hi, I'm originally from Boston and now live around 15 minutes from Dulles. I will direct message you my number. Feel free to reach out if your son needs help accessing any resources while he's in this area. Original poster. Thank you. I'm heading out of Logan soon. Update comment. 1 hour later, 10 hours from original poster post. This post is legit. I'm heading to DC. We're getting a lawyer, but beyond that, I don't know. Once I speak with him, we'll decide next steps. If it were me in his situation, I would share this all over the place. But he's young. I'm scared of the repercussions for him, especially in this political climate. Update same post, May 15, 2025, 6 hours later, 16 from original poster post. Final update, for now, 5/15. Hi everyone. Thank you all for the response to this post. I was at a point of desperation last night and didn't know where else to turn. The support, concern, and offers of help have been amazing. I was finally able to have a conversation with my son. He's still pretty exhausted and jet-lagged, and I'm sure in shock. At this time, I don't want to provide specific details for his protection. We're going to be talking to an attorney as well as others that may be able to give us a better understanding or clear this up. He's a kid. We just want this to be over for him, and to be able to attend college and travel as the law-abiding U.S. citizen that he is. I will let you know, he made his way to the customs stand and handed his passport to the agent. He was asked the standard questions, and then they put a yellow card in his passport and told him to go to another area. He said he was in an area with about 10 other people. They would call people into a room one by one. They searched his bags several times. He was then told to go back out and sit down. There was a lot of waiting and watching other people come and go. He said the initial officer searching appeared to be border control. In addition to searching his bags, they asked him repeatedly if anyone was waiting for him. He told them no, his plans were to go to hotel to meet up with family. After several hours, 2 Federal Bureau of Investigation agents came in. They would ask him questions regarding his feelings towards the president, terrorists, and political memes he liked on Instagram, then send him back out to wait for long periods of time. They also asked him several times if anyone was there waiting for him. No, he shouldn't have answered their questions and shouldn't have let them search his phone. Although clearing through customs, I don't know that he really had a choice. But he's only 19. He was very scared. He had been up over 24 hours at this point. When they told him he could go, they said they're keeping his phone and his laptop because they're not done searching it and should get them back in a couple of days. Luckily, he remembered my phone number without having to look it up on his phone that he didn't have. He said he was worried that we didn't know where he was and didn't know what was happening to him. That's when he was finally able to call me around 4:30 a.m. He was detained from about 8 p.m. to 4:30 a.m. He's done nothing wrong. There was not a specific activity he participated in that they questioned, specific group that he belongs to, nothing. From what I gather, they were trying to find something. They found nothing, so now they have his laptop and phone. Original poster adds some more information in a comment. This is what they gave him when they decided they were done. Oh, and they told him to use a payphone to reach me. Detained for 8 hours. Reason for detention, border search image. The detention notice. Original poster adds some more information on May 18, 2025. He's white, 1/4 Asian but marks Caucasian and looks totally white. We were told he was a random pull. Senator's office. We are going to be speaking to an attorney that practices in this area of law. Multiple press agencies have reached out, but we are waiting to speak to our attorney. Thanks again. This is crazy. If you or someone you know is going through a tough time, please reach out for help. There are resources available, and you don't have to go through it alone. This video does not promote illegal activity. It is shared for commentary and educational purposes.